Hey everyone, good evening. Good evening. I'm gonna just give it 2 more minutes. Hey Tanya, can you hear me? Hi everyone. Hello, blessings, 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 blessings to everyone. Give me a second. One more minute. I'm just gonna get started. I was waiting on Lolo. Guess he will join us later. Tanya, can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
I'm here.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Donna, do you have multiple devices open or no? Just one?
Probably. Let me see. Hold on.
I think that's where the echo is coming from.
Is it an echo?
Huh?
Is it an echo?
Let me see. Yeah, still. I'll just let you, because today was a long day, but
Okay, yeah, because I'm gonna go ahead and get started.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you guys. So this morning, bear with me. My throat hurt, my head hurt, so bear with me. So this morning, they continue with McDavid's the defense questioning. Before that, though, the government wanted to raise some things related to Derrel McDavid's testimony. They said most of what they say. Most of Derrel McDavid's testimony was based on Barry Hankerson. So the government says Barry's niece was involved in a sexual relationship with Aaliyah. Was involved in a sexual relationship with Robert. So the government felt that because they had talked about Barry so much throughout his testimony, that they should be able to bring Aaliyah up too and ask questions related to her relationship with Rob during the cross-examination of Derrel McDavid. Brinkley, who is Derrel McDavid's lead attorney, says that that's not the same fine print. Aaliyah happened 6 years prior, and Barry was still with um, Robert after this situation. Derrel McDavid will testify that Rob had married Aaliyah to get. He said if Derrel McDavid testified, he would testify that Rob married Aaliyah to get her out of an abusive relationship with her parents. Bajin Stepsons says, this is just a setup all by the government. The government knew that Barry's name was going to be brought into this, and they used that to be able to bring in this alleged relationship with Aaliyah. He's already been tried and convicted of that in another court. It would be double jeopardy to bring it back up in this courtroom. The government says that, well, it's all Derrel McDavid's attorney's fault because he's the one who brought up Barry Hankerson into this. So now they can bring up Aaliyah. He stayed on it the majority of his testimony. After the judge said a couple of the things that he felt necessary to say, he denied the government's request to bring Aaliyah into this. So Mr. Brinkley starts and he says, we're going to take a step back just to get clarity on some of the things that Derrel McDavid spoke about yesterday. He says, Charles Freeman. Did you ever go swimming with Charles Freeman? He says no. Did you ever tell Charles that you wanted to engage in additional work with him? He says no. Um, when you heard his testimony, did you think that was any of that true? He said no. He said, um, when we ended, we were talking about the meeting with the parents. So yesterday, remember, they had talked about Derrel McDavid taking. They had ended with Derrel McDavid taking Rob to meet the parents in Oak Park. That was in December of 2001. Yes, it was around midday. Derrel McDavid remembers it was midday because after they left, he took Rob to his kid's school. They asked, he asked, where did you ask him to go? And then he said, I asked him to go to my kid's school with me. And he said, why? And he said, because my kids love to see Rob, and it was Christmas time. At that time, his children were about 10 and 7. He said they went to a school called Holmes. When they walked in, he said they found out that his son was in the lunchroom. So he said at that time, the lunchroom turned into a madhouse. Rob ended up saying, where's Will? Will ran over, that's Derrel McDavid's son, ran over. Rob had parted the crowd, and they gave each other a big hug. The principal then escorted them to the other son's classroom. That son was surprised to see him. He gave Rob a big hug. Derrel McDavid and Rob apologized to the teacher for the inconvenience, and then they left the school. After that, an article came out about Rob's appearance at that school. He didn't go into detail, but I'm pretty sure it wasn't a good interview, just because of the fact that they mentioned it. Derrel McDavid has 2 sons and 1 daughter. He asked about how's Rob's relationship with your kids. There was an objection. The judge sustained that question. Mr. Brinkley said, let me ask you a question about your daughter. What type of relationship did she have with Rob? Then there was another objection. It was overruled. Derrel McDavid said they were close. If you believe that the allegations were true, would you have allowed your daughter to be around him? There was an objection. The judge sustained that question. He said, after you took him to the school, who did you end up hiring down the line for Robert? He said, Edward Jensen. He said, John Toohey is the one who helped him find him. John Toohey told him that he would find a criminal attorney for Rob. He said he gave him a list of 4 names, but he said that Jensen was the go-to person. I said, when you went to meet him, who was there? He said, I was there, Margolis, Toohey, Jensen. He said, after talking to Jensen, it became clear he was extremely bright and an intelligent man. After speaking for 5 minutes, he said Jensen had already put the whole entire puzzle together. He said before the pieces were put together, Jensen had asked who was R. Kelly. Derrel McDavid said, have you ever heard I Believe I Can Fly? He said yes. He said, well, he's the person that wrote, produced, and sang that song. Rob ended up meeting with Jensen and Derrel McDavid. He said that meeting lasted about 15 minutes. They said Rob liked the fact that he was able to stick to the facts. So at that point, he was hired. Jensen wanted to interview the family. Jensen was also provided with the reports that they had showed that we talked about yesterday. Somebody said, "Oh, my head just hurts really bad. My throat hurts." So he says he said he provided Jensen with the reports from yesterday. They were on a conference call and they discussed that interview that the reports were done with Margolis. They said he talked about people who let's talk about people who posed a threat to Rob's career. Did anyone give you a reason to question them? He said yes. They asked who. He said Cheryl Cobb. Were you made aware of a call that Cheryl Cobb had made? Yes. How? Margolis told him. What did he tell you? He said Barry had called her. Barry had called her and said he was in the possession of a tape of Rob and that it was going to screw up the Olympics. He was gloating about it. They asked, "What does the Olympics have to do with Rob?" Derrel McDavid said Rob was scheduled to perform at the Olympics. That call was made 4 days before. Rob was a superstar, and when you get to play at the Olympics, that takes you to a whole nother level of stardom. Derrel McDavid said he spent an enormous amount of time in Utah preparing for these Olympics with Rob. He said he was there for about 2 weeks total. I don't know if Cheryl Cobb is Cheryl Mack. I wanted to assume, but I said I don't want to assume because they say Cheryl Cobb. Did the timing of the call and Hankerson mentioning the tape with the minor mean anything to you? He said yes. But he didn't feel that it was just a coincidence. And he also knew that Barry wanted to destroy Rob. He knew that there was no truth, and Jane's family continued to deny over and over. He says he didn't know where all everything was coming from, but he knew that Barry Hankerson is the one who said that he had the tape. He said Hankerson was a powerful man, and he was known to get whatever he wanted. He had such a hate for Rob. He said he thought he could possibly fake a tape, and then he would leak it. Another call came that same day from Jim Derrel to Margolis. Margolis called Derrel McDavid immediately afterwards. Margolis told Jim Derrel there was an objection. What did Margolis tell you that motivated you to take action? He said Margolis said that this has gone too far. Barry is trying to destroy Rob. He's got to get a hold of this tape. Derrel said that he had Demetrius said that he had a tape of Rob and a young girl having sex. In the terms of the events that Jim Derrel makes the call on the same day as Barry, what did you think about that? Derrel McDavid said that it was all made up. I don't think it was a coincidence. He said they then contacted Jensen about this, and he made them aware of this tape. He said that he needed to interview Jane himself, and in addition to that, Derrel McDavid received docs that was sent to the Sun-Times and a letter regarding the tape. So he wrote the letter. They showed Derrel McDavid Exhibit 10. Exhibit 10 was a letter he wrote to the Sun-Times. It was reviewed in 2002. That was around the same time it was drafted, March 1st, 2002. Derrel had invited them to view the tape in the invitation that the attorney was unable to take February 8, 2002, the Sun-Times published an article about the description of the video. They said, "I'm saying you told us that we." They said in that letter, "You told us that we would be able to view that tape. Then you have refused us access to it, but you're more interested in developing." I see. Some untruthful facts.
Donnie,
Um,
I'm sorry.
huh?
Do you want to wave? Do you feel okay?
No, I'm okay. I'm fine. Thank you, though. I'm okay, y'all. I got some tea. I'll be all right. Let this Tylenol kick in. He says, "We have not seen the tape, but a video, and this is important, guys." He says a video similar to that tape is on the internet site. The owner of that site is Demetrius Smith. He has Demetrius had already stated that he put the video that he put out was a fake, and that he put it there to prove that the other video is not of R. Kelly. Derrel got it stated in a letter that he stated in a letter that the Sun-Times still maintain copies of the tape. So what did that tell you about them having a copy of a minor? He said, Derrel McDavid says, "If they did, that would be a crime, and either they crazy or the story was made up." So did you not know? So did you believe what Kelly told you and what Paladina had told you, or did you begin to doubt them? He said, "No, I believe them." The Sun-Times printed there another story on February the 8th, the day of the Olympics. Derrel McDavid said, "I did not believe the legitimacy of the tape and couldn't because they couldn't believe that they would stoop that low," meaning that sometimes, "to release this on the day of the Olympics." However, that did not stop his performance because NBC didn't believe the accusation. At the time the rumor comes out in December 2001, by January 2002, they asked, "What were your duties?" He said he was more focused on the Olympics. He had stayed in Salt Lake City. He had to make sure Rob was prepared. He worked with the security, because the president was also there. He said he got involved in what hotels Rob stayed in, the times he performed, and he basically helped keep the costs under control and etc. He said he spent more time focused on the Olympics rather than focusing on the rumors that was happening. Magalis and Jensen would be handling those things. He said Jensen wanted to interview Jane. He asked, Did you have a one-on-one prior to that?" Derrel McDavid said yes. "What did he say you needed to do?" And he said, "I needed to sign a doc to say that I was a part of the defense team." He said the reason for that is because Rob was really hard to catch up with, and they needed pretty much like a face at that time. So Derrel McDavid was the main person in that meeting. And that was a meeting with Jensen. Rob had told Derrel McDavid, "I make the music, you deal with the lawyers." He asked, was Kelly playing any role in the decision making? He said no. He helped set up the interview by calling Rob and telling him what needed to happen. So on the day of the interview, this is the interview with Jane. They called Rob to get that interview set up. On the day the interview was set to take place, Derrel McDavid was present at Jensen's private office. He described the office. It was probably 5 to 10 lawyers, a number of assistants, large office with a lot of smaller offices. Derrel McDavid was in Jensen's private office. I hate saying over and over again. Speaking to him, when Jane came into Jensen's office, Jensen told Derrel McDavid to immediately get out. He said he went into the lobby area. He spoke with an executive assistant. Jane was in the office in a meeting with Jensen. Rob was walking around looking at all the pictures or something on the wall. He said Rob nor him nor himself was in the office with Jane. Also present that he seen in that office was a famous prosecutor, female attorneys, some females he didn't know, and some other people. After he finished talking to Jane, after they finished, Jane and Rob left. Joe McDavid said he went back into Jensen's office. They said, what did Jensen say? He said that he believed her, that the tape is a fake, and he said, I'm going to prove it. He then told Joe McDavid that she denied it. It was her on the tape. Derrel McDavid said Jensen was a very animated person. He was a fighter. So when he spoke about this, he slammed his fist on the table, and he was adamant that this wasn't true about Rob. At this time, Derrel McDavid asked for a bathroom break. We didn't take a break or anything. He just took him a short break. When he came back, they said earlier in the trial when Jane's mother testified about taking a trip out of town. Do you remember that? Yes. Where did this happen? In my office. Who was present? Just me and the parents. Jane's father did most of the talking. What did he say? That he had spoken to Rob and was concerned about the publicity and wanted to know if they could go out of town. There was an objection. The judge told him, no, let's just move on. Who did you call? He said, I called Jensen while they were still in the office. He said because with the way everything was going, he wanted to make sure that that was the best decision. Jensen said it was fine. They was not under any subpoena and they could leave town. Did you pay? He said, I'm pretty sure we did pay for that trip. He said, how long was it? He said they may have took 1 or 2 trips, probably 2. The first trip lasted about a week and a half. That time, the Sun-Times article had came out after they had actually got back, and so Brandon had asked for another trip. The second trip was about a week or 2. The attorney asked, were they prevented from being subpoenaed? He said no. Did Rob have the resources to send them on a trip longer? Could he send them on a trip for over a month if he wanted to? Joe McDavid said yes. Did he ever suggest that he wanted to do that? He says never. What did you know about June Brown? What did you know about June Brown going on those trips to his trial? He said until the trial, he didn't even know June Brown was ever even there. He said he was spending time focusing on, he wasn't spending time focusing on June because of the Olympics. He said he had a conversation with Brandon in the office that lasted about 15 minutes. He made a phone call to Jensen that was about 3 minutes. And at that time, when the convo happened, they asked, did you believe that was Jane on that tape? He said again, no. After the story came out in the Sun-Times, can you explain what happened with the civil suits? He said, after that story came out, the civil suits increased dramatically. The report stated Rob was being investigated criminally, but none of the people involved in the civil suits ever went to the police, nor did the police ever come to Rob. Jensen said handling civil suits the way to handle civil suits is that they should always be settled. Any claims could hurt the trial. He didn't want things out in the media. Jensen didn't allow Rob to make statements or to get depositions, so the civil suits had to be settled. Do you know if you were ever named in a suit that might have been alleged but not filed? He said yes. You ever settle with anyone? He said no. After allegations came out, how did Kelly handle the pressure? He said he broke down. It got to be too much for him. He was someone that I hadn't seen before. He was broken. Derrel McDavid said he had hired him a psychiatrist. Derrel McDavid attended the first 2 sessions with Rob. Did they ask questions about Jane? There was an objection, overruled. He said, definitely. Did you still believe he told the truth? Yes. What did Rob say to the psychiatrist? He told the psychiatrist the same thing he told me. It wasn't him. He never had a relationship with his goddaughter. He was being set up. Why would Rob waste time going into a psychiatrist if he wasn't telling the truth? How much time uh, went by from the article until the indictment? He said from the time that article was published in the Sun-Times to the time Rob was indicted, it was about 4 months. During that 4 months, did Jane ever suggest to do what did Jane do that suggested she may have lied? Derrel McDavid said absolutely nothing. She never changed the story. He said he had learned from Jensen that she even went before the grand jury. Derrel McDavid said he saw the statement that Jane had actually gave, and he still believed Jane had told the truth then. When you read the grand jury statement, was it in between? He said, I don't even remember what dates it was. So he said Jane denied that it was her on the tape, and she was shown images of the tape before she had actually denied the tape. Because she had denied it to so many people, and now even under oath, Derrel McDavid still believed that it was true what she was saying, and it wasn't her. He said because she was just so consistent. And he said Jensen had pretty much said the exact same thing. Jensen's confidence in that increased once he had actually seen the tape and knew it was a fake. Where did Rob live when he was indicted on the state charges? Florida. He was arrested. Derrel McDavid said he was surprised by that because the prosecutors had swore that they would allow Rob to turn himself in. Jensen lost his mind when he found out. He was livid. They had lied to him. Jensen said the prosecutors don't have a case. They're trying to make a case in the media, and they was trying to taint the media. They was trying to taint the jury by trying the case in the media. But his main thing is that he could not believe that the prosecutors had lied to him. When you found out what they did, what did that make you feel? He said that made me feel like you can't trust prosecutors because they'll do anything possible to win a case. Derrel McDavid, Jensen, Reverend Meeks all flew to Florida. Reverend Meeks was a pastor out of Chicago with one of the largest congregations on the South Side. I know this. After they got there, they agreed to turn Rob over to the police. Oh, I'm sorry. Once they arrived there, the police in Florida agreed to turn Rob over to Meeks and Jensen to return him to Chicago. He was supposed to be allowed to turn himself in at 26 in California, but when he got there, as soon as they pulled up, TV cameras were everywhere. He said we got out of the van that we drove in, and as soon as we touched the steps, they immediately grabbed Rob, handcuffed him. They being the law enforcement. When you saw them grab him, did you feel like this was a sincere, legitimate prosecution? No. He said at this time, now the prosecution lied 2 times. He said it seemed like they was trying to create a media circus and get Rob tried and convicted in the media. He discussed with Jensen the necessary next steps to take. Jensen said that he would hire an expert, which was Charles Palmer. Jensen never had a doubt that he would be able to prove that tape was a fake. Jensen's demeanor was that he was furious. He had talked to he talked to him about the other tapes, and Jensen said he wanted every single tape to be found and analyzed so that he could see if they were fake. The people involved in going to get the tapes was Margolis and Jensen, and then they bring in whoever they needed. He said he thought that was important because this was a trial about tapes, and they didn't want anything affecting the trial, but also concerned about it hurting Rob's career. Who was supposed to assist in getting the tape out? John Arnold and Palladino. John Arnold was Jensen's private investigator. Were there any other tapes you were concerned about? He said yes. A tape with Rob and another man. He said in 1994, Rob had a conversation with him where Rob said that there was a guy in Florida saying that he had a tape of him and Rob together. And Rob said, "Do you believe that?" He said, "Do you believe that?" Derrel McDavid said no. He said it felt like Rob was trying to feel him out the way he had asked him that. Derrel McDavid said, not out by telling him, the way he told him. He said he feels like it was more of like Rob was asking for his acceptance. He said, if that makes sense. He said he was having a hard time telling this while he was talking to you guys, just so you know. He says Derrel McDavid said it stuck in his mind for a very long time, that conversation, because he said it wasn't a big deal to him, but the way Rob had phrased that question. He did share this concern. He did share what Rob had told him with Jensen. Jensen said, "You better make sure you get all those tapes." And Margolis felt the same way. And at that time, there was a break. Huh? Oh, okay. I stopped talking like I was finna take a break. Okay, so then the government asked, when we came back from break, before the jury came back in, the government had asked about that limited instruction. That was the use of the evidence. The judge says he needed them to draft it up and he would consider it sometime around the next break. So then Mr. Brinkley went back to questioning Derrel McDavid. He said, "We were talking about Margolis and your concern about the tape with Rob and a grown man." He said, it was a grown man, correct? And he said, "Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely." He said he had a fear about Rob's career in these tapes. Margolis was an entertainment attorney, and Rob's image was all about sex and masculinity. And he thought that having that tape out would reflect him in a negative way, would be a negative image on him. Were there a number of tapes provided to Jensen? He said yes, and it came from Palladino and Ironman. Jensen told him when he got each one of the tapes. Between the time of the indictment, 2002, and the trial in 2008, who was viewing the tapes? Jensen, and I assume an expert. Did you know? Who? No. Outside of an expert, did anyone else besides the assistant view the tapes? No. Who was in charge of having the tapes watched? Jensen. Did any of the tapes appear to have anyone underage on there? He said never. After Rob was indicted in 2002, did Chuck reemerge in your life? He said yes. Chuck filed a lawsuit against Rob. Margolis told Derrel McDavid about it. He had told him that he was looking for he had told him that Chuck was looking for the balance from the $140,000 because remember, you guys, yesterday he had only paid him $65K. So he said because he had viewed the lawsuit as an extortion because he had hit Rob with this when he was at his most vulnerable states during his trial. During this lawsuit, it was never suggested. Was it ever suggested that you promised him $1 million? No. He said, if it was illegal material, if the tapes that Charles had was illegal material, do you think that they would have actually filed a lawsuit in the courts regarding some illegal material? No. Do you think Charles was entitled to that money? No. He told Jensen Margolis, and they told them that he told them that Chuck was a bad disease that would keep coming back. And keep coming back and keep coming back. He said he was convinced that they said that he convinced them because they couldn't afford for this to get into the media. So the attorneys convinced Derrel McDavid to pay him because they couldn't afford for this to hit the media. The concern was if Chuck didn't get paid, he would make up more lies in the media. With that, another settlement had to be paid. If it was up to Derrel McDavid, he wouldn't have gave him a dime. The attorneys all agreed Chuck needed to be paid. He said it didn't occur to him anything was wrong because that's why he had hired experts to advise and what to advise them to do. Did Rob do any collabs with any other artists during this time? Yes. Wyclef Jean. He did 2 albums with Jay-Z. He toured with Jay-Z. Was Jay-Z a prominent artist at that time? Yes. Did Rob and Jay-Z have a long-term relationship before the rumors? Yes. And Jay-Z still continued to tour with him. How did you see that towards the allegations? So just from that talk about Jay-Z, the prosecution had objected about 4 or 5 times, and each time the judge overruled every objection. So Derrel McDavid was like, when Binkley, he was like, I need you to repeat the question because all these objections is throwing me off. So he was basically asking him, how did you feel knowing that Jay-Z was still touring with him and everything after these rumors? He said, I still felt like they weren't true. Rob released his own album, and he released that through Sony. He said he believed Chocolate Factory was his probably most successful album. It was around 2003, 2004. He said he had won 7 Grammys. He continues to make public appearances. He was asked to perform actually at an Obama function, but that didn't materialize because it wasn't in Chicago. And if you guys remember, after he was indicted, when he went to court, he had stipulations on his travel. So that's why he didn't do that. The fact that the music industry continued to support Rob, did that put an impact on your thoughts about him? He said yes, because if his peers didn't believe he did it, then he had no reason to believe it. He said it was even his fan base that believed in him. R. Kelly was an icon. People grew up on his music. And if his fans were still believing in him, that was important. Because if these allegations were true, none of them would be doing that. The amount of money when it came to settling lawsuits, he said, let's talk about the amount of money that came when it came to settling lawsuits. He said there were obviously I don't know what this word is. There was obviously something about Jane on the tape that she didn't deny. I'm sorry. So she's asking, there was many lawsuits, but did Jane ever ask or request $250,000? Never. Did she ever request $1 million? Never. Did Rob ever say, I need you to take this money to Jane? Never. Did he say, did the parents ever ask for money? Never. Did Rob say, I need you to take this money to the parents? Never. Derrel McDavid said that if those allegations were true, he would imagine that they would have asked for a substantial amount of money, but they never did. So he always felt that they were being true. Did someone contact you around 2007 about a specific stolen sex tape? Yes. He said Rob said that Lisa Van Allen had called him. Um, I want to read that. He said, I'm sorry. He said Rob had contacted him and said that Lisa Van Allen called him. Who was she? She was one of Rob's girlfriends. He said, how do you know? He said, because a couple of times I opened the door to the Sprinter and they'll be in there making out. Did Rob tell you what she said? Yes. She told me that Lisa Van Allen had a tape with a threesome. It was with him, his wife, and her on it. And when she said that, did you ask Rob anything? Yes. I asked him if this was possible. He said yes. He made no effort to deny the sex tape or the threesome. What Rob's concerns is that this could destroy his marriage. But most importantly, he was concerned about how his children would feel knowing that their mother was involved in this. What did Rob say Lisa Van Allen said she wanted? Money. Derrel McDavid said, Derrel McDavid then contacted Jensen. Jensen was worried that Lisa Van Allen, he was worried about her age. So the first thing he wanted to do was verify that. So he had her investigated and he discovered that she was 18 when she met Rob. Jensen expressed concerns or opinions. Yes, he did. He said that the tape would be a horrible for the case. He knew that he could win this case and he didn't want nothing to ruin it. So Derrel McDavid told Jensen if she wanted money, he said go ahead and pay her. Lisa Van Allen stated that she wanted to be paid in cash. He said he didn't see anything. He was a CPA, so he really didn't see any reason to not pay in cash, but just in case he did speak with Jensen. Derrel McDavid made the arrangements for Lisa Van Allen to come to Chicago in 2007. Jensen gave the instructions. She didn't come at that time with the tape. He found out from her that Keith had the tape. He understood Keith to be a member of the group Talent and was signed to Rob's label. Keith had connections to someone who else was grimy and was stealing. Yes, Chuck. When he found out that he knew everything was, when he found that out, he knew everything was shady. He said, when he found out that she didn't have the tape, he told Jensen. Jensen told him to call Keith. Keith talked to Derrel McDavid because he was not going to talk to any lawyers or the investigators. Did Jensen allow Kelly to be involved? No. Did you call? Yes. He confirmed that he did have a tape. What did he tell you? There was an objection. Then they go to Robert and Lisa Van Allen, and a woman believed to be Robert's wife was on the tape. And did he give any indication that there was a minor on that tape? No. Was the description of the context of that tape consistent with what he said here during trial? Yes. Remember Keith said he didn't see nothing illegal on that, so that's what they're asking. What did Keith want? He wanted $200,000. Lisa Van Allen wanted $200,000. Did you inform Jensen of this price? Yes. Jensen said pay him. Jensen said he was going to have all of them take polygraph tests. Jack Palladino wasn't involved with arranging these things because, again, they didn't want to deal with any investigators or lawyers. So the polygraph was done at the Westin Hotel. Exhibit 323 is the polygraph examination sheet of Keith Morrell. In the very beginning, I showed you guys that and went over that sheet. Not gonna do it tonight. Beaumont would conduct the poly. He was the one Jensen always relied on for those tests. He also had an office in Jensen's building. He said, who was involved in the decision making to whether tests would be done? He said that would have been Jensen and Beaumont. He doesn't know how or why they decided upon the location. Before they arrived, actions was took to obtain the money. He said he was in his office. He called Milton Brown and Chris Wilson. He wrote a check to Milton Brown and told have Wilson go to the bank with him to get the money and to bring it back to Derrel McDavid. He wrote the check to Brown because he didn't want to have to drive to the bank and he needed to be back at the hotel. He said he had to go because Keith and he only had to go to this meeting because Keith and Beaumont had never met each other before. So he had to go and make the introductions. He specifically asked Wilson to escort Brown to and from the bank with the money because one, it was a lot of money, and he wanted to make sure that Brown showed up with it. And when he got to the hotel, he said he met with Keith in the lobby. Brown and Wilson met Derrel McDavid at that hotel as well with the money. Derrel McDavid took the bag of money. Did you tell Brown what the money was for ever? He said no. Who was there waiting for you after you got the money? He said Beaumont. After that, they went to whatever room that they was going to do the polygraph test in. Derrel McDavid showed Keith that he had the money at that point, and he said because Keith had asked to see it. They went to take the poly. Were you present? No. Only Keith and Beaumont. Derrel McDavid went back to his office. They said, well, if you plan on playing Lisa Van Allen and Keith, why did you leave with the money? He said, because I didn't know how long that the test would take, and I didn't want to be downtown with all of that money. So he said he waited for the call of the test results. He said that didn't come till later that night. So around April 17, 2017, were you there when the recording was turned over? No. He said he got a call from Jensen saying to get down here now. Derrel McDavid took the $200K to the office to see Jensen. He said because when Jensen called, you made sure that you was there. You got on top of it. He said Lisa Van Allen and Keith was there. Jensen was in his office. They were in the lobby. He said to get in his office, they closed the door. Jensen screamed curse words, said Keith had failed the test and that they had some type of goddamn disc and not a VHS. What did he say? He began to get agitated, and about 4 to 5 minutes later, he finally calmed down and said, give him good faith money and tell him they better bring back the fucking tapes. And he said he gave them $20,000 each. When the money was handed over, it was at the lawyer's office. Yes. You didn't see the disc. No, I didn't. You paid them the $20,000. Yes. You explained that you explained to them that they wouldn't get more. Yes, unless they gave the rest of the tapes. Yes. He said Lisa Van Allen threw a fit. She started screaming and yelling it wasn't fair, and then eventually they left the office. Did they ever come back? Yes. Did you arrange for it? He said, I'm sure I probably did. Did this happen at Jensen's directions? Yes. Was another polygraph to be done? Yes. Who set this up? Jensen. After it was done, were you given the results? He said no. He was only told pass, fail. Jensen said that When they came back, if Keith passed, he would be turning over that tape and they would also get the money. The second poly would be at the hotel, polygraph test. Derrel McDavid didn't know which hotel. He said, "Were you there?" No. "Did you ever go there?" No. "Why not?" He said, "Because at this point they all knew each other, so he didn't really have to be there." The second polygraph was August the 20th, 2007. Jensen told Derrel McDavid to wait for a call saying if Keith passed or not. Keith at that time would hand over the tape. Derrel McDavid would pay him if he passed. Derrel was not present for this. He said, "In the evening, did Jensen call?" "Yes." He said Keith had passed, pay him and get the tapes. He said he believed he actually went to another hotel where Keith was. Keith gave him the VHS tape. He gave Keith $80,000. That was the remainder of his $100,000 because they were going to split $200,000. He also gave Lisa Van Allen $80,000. After he paid him the balance, he said he went straight back to Jensen's office. It was about 13 or 14 minutes from a ride to Jensen's office. He said when he got there, Jensen and Ronnie Winters was there. Ronnie Winters was one of Jensen's drivers. He had handed over a videotape to one of them. He said he don't remember which one. Did he give it to Winters or did he give it to Jensen? He wasn't sure, but he gave them the videotape. He said he did not watch the tape. He had actually left to go get food and then he went home to go to sleep. He said he got a call from Jensen saying that it was Kelly, Drea, and Lisa Van Allen on that tape. Derrel McDavid had called Rob. What did you say the tape? Hold on. He said he told Rob that the tape that you had requested has been retrieved and we're giving it to Jensen and was given to Jensen. That he never delivered another tape to Jensen. He said he believed that he noted the payment that came out of the base productions account for the $200K. They never tried to hide it. He did file that $200,000 on Rob's taxes. He said there was nothing improper had been done to make this look suspicious. He believed that all I'm sorry. He said he believed that at no point was there said to be a minor was ever on that tape. So then we took a lunch break. We came back. They again was discussing the limited instructions. I didn't write too much of any of that down because, again, like I told y'all yesterday, we don't know what the instructions was, so there was no point in me trying to write down stuff, and we don't know what A, B, C, and D is. Okay, so he said, we just talked about the tape with the threesome. After that incident, was there another time Lisa Van Allen attempted to get more money from Rob? Yes, about a month or so later. Rob called and told him. He said Rob told him Lisa Van Allen had another tape of a threesome and said that she had a tape with her, Rob, and Jane on it. He said when he heard it, it didn't make sense to him because if she had two tapes, one with his wife and one with the minor, why wouldn't you use your best card first to get money? And why would you come out now? So he didn't believe her. So Derrel McDavid called Jensen. Jensen said a bunch of curse words, and then he said, "Get her up here. I want to interview her." This is obviously another big ass lie. She's not getting any more money. Derrel McDavid arranged for her to come. Of course, they didn't tell her that she wasn't getting any more money at that time. She was supposed to go to Jensen's office to make a statement first. Then she was supposed to go do a polygraph test. Derrel McDavid said he wasn't present for either. Now, this is the meeting where Lisa actually said in her testimony they wouldn't pay for her hotel room or anything. they made her pay for everything. So Derrel McDavid said he was not present for either. Jensen told Derrel McDavid about the results. Jensen told him that when Lisa Van Allen was interviewed, she actually admitted in that interview that it was all a lie. She never had a tape of Rob the minor and herself. Jensen told Derrel McDavid to tell her that she's not getting another diamond to send her ass home. Derrel McDavid went to her, told her, she got hysterical and said that she was going to the prosecutor's office. Lisa Van Allen said that you said you should have had her murked. Did you ever say that? He said, no, I never said nothing like that. After that incident, she was sent home. She ended up talking to the prosecutors, yes. The story she gave the prosecutors was the same story she gave this jury. But back then, when he heard it, he had heard because Jensen had told him about it. Jensen couldn't believe that she was coming back in here, that she was actually coming back to try to get more money. He said he knew that Lisa Van Allen had told, that was telling a ton of lies because they both looked at the tape, and law enforcement never came after them, never came after Rob, never even talked to Derrel McDavid or anyone about the story she was telling or the tape that she allegedly had. Nor did she tell law enforcement about any of the threats that Derrel McDavid was allegedly making. Did this suggest to you that anyone believed what she was saying? He said, I don't think anybody believed her. I don't know how anybody could believe her. After the Olympics was over in March 2002, what happened? What other categories of work did you do from March 2002 to May 2008? He said, I did a multitude of things. At that time, we had 1 or 2 tours. We had appearances, 2 albums, production work. He had an album with Jay-Z. He said much of your time was occupied. He said, yeah, most of it, day-to-day stuff. He said he talked once a day to Rob for about 20 minutes, and then he'd go to his office sometimes and talk to him. Most of his work was not even related to Rob anymore. He said his other clients was one person who was licensed to move nuclear waste, doctors, lawyers, other entertainers. He was working with clients that took a great deal of his time. He had actually purchased 2 or 3 apartment buildings during this time. He had bought another building that was about 22,000 square feet. And he said there was an elevator that was a certain place he had to get that moved. And he said that project was the most demanding of him. And this was about 2005, 2006. Also, he had the restaurant business. He said, which he was involved in with other people. He did that about 5 or 6 times at NFL. And then he started to work on his own. And his has been up for about 13 years now. Did you have time to spend on Kelly's criminal case? He said, no, I wasn't spending a lot of time on that. He asked that Kelly also worked on Trap the Closet during that 2002, 2008 too. And he went on and said, he said he can't recall how many chapters and things it was. And when they asked to tell him what chapter in the closet was, he said it was like a series where Rob played multiple personalities, multiple people, and he made it similar to, he called it Medina, but he was talking about Medea. So once they finished talking about that, and the jury got an understanding for Trapped in the Closet, he said, Jensen and them was pretty much handling the majority of the entire criminal case part. What role did Rob play? Rob never really played any role in it. He said even after those days, he was not interested. The video that was the subject of the 2008 trial, he said he ended up watching that with Jensen in his office. Jensen wanted him to watch it to prove to him that it was a fake. He said the portion that he watched, it was on he couldn't remember if it was it a VHS or a DVD. He said, I believe it was a DVD, but it was only snippets of Rob's back. He said it was kind of broken down into like a singular frames. Derrel McDavid says that what he saw on the frames was the mole on Rob's back jumping all around, disappearing and reappearing. He said that that convinced him that it was a fake. Jensen said, I told you it was a fucking fake. At that time, nothing else led him to the conclusion that it wasn't a fake. Jane testified that she made a tape in 1998. Yes, the last time Derrel McDavid seen her was in 2001. The portion you saw was a female visible? He said no, because it was just snippets of Rob's back. Did you have an idea of who the female could have been? He said no, because he never saw the female in the video. He said he heard discussions about the necklace. Yes. Were you present when Jensen interviewed her? He said no. Did he discuss with you? Yes. Jensen said that the necklace on the video appeared to be similar to the one in her passport. So Jensen wanted to find out how many were actually made. They ended up finding out that there were 65,000 of those necklaces. Derrel McDavid said he was not present for any of the preparation meetings with Jane, but Jensen did tell him about it. He said Jensen said she always denied it was her, and he felt that she was always telling the truth. Jane did not testify at that trial. Jensen told him the reason he didn't want her in the trial was because they had already won, and that young lady had been through enough, and he didn't want her on the stand to have to go through more traumatizing things with overzealous prosecutors. Do you remember the judge? Yes. Judge Vince Vaughn. That judge, yes, Derrel McDavid can recall, because this is the judge that said this tape was the rotten tomato in a bag full of tomatoes. You said there was an issue with the tape. Yes. The prosecution had entered a tape into evidence in 2008, and then later the state's attorney said that they had made a mistake and that it was actually a DVD, and the pixels on the tape were all messed up and out of place. Derrel McDavid did attend Rob's, and that's the reason why the judge said that tape was the rotten tomato in a bag full of tomatoes. Derrel McDavid did attend Rob's trial. He said he was there almost every day, so he heard almost everything, and he heard the judge say that himself. He was definitely convinced that this was the prosecutor. Part of prosecutor. He definitely thought that this was a part of prosecutor misconduct. They lied several times. The government objects at this point. He said he felt the case wasn't fair. Jensen made statements to Derrel McDavid after the judge's statement. He said, yes, I would ask for a mistrial. I could ask for a mistrial and get it in 2 seconds, but this case is already won anyway. Did Lisa Van Allen testify? Yes, she did. He said during her testimony, he was in the hallway. He knew she was going to be telling a story about him. Jensen said that he had caught Lisa Van Allen in so many lies, and that he couldn't even understand why the prosecution would even put her on the stand back then. Do you recall looking at that interview report they did on Damon Pryor? He said yes. Jensen showed him. Showing him the document Exhibit 12 is titled the interview report. Did you review this before trial in 2008? Yes. Did the context make you feel or think that this was all still fake? He said yes. He says Lisa Van Allen has spoke to a group of, this is what Damon Pryor is stating in this report. He said Lisa Van Allen talked to a group of guys, Chuck and Keith, and they talked about putting together a tape of a man that looked very similar to Kelly and some female. And they would use that to bribe Kelly for money and bring him down. Now again, this is not Derrel McDavid saying that this is what happened. This is Damon Pryor. Damon Pryor is Lisa Van Allen's baby father. They actually met in 2000. They began a relationship in 2000. They began living together in 2001. They had a baby together. Around 2002, people started selling that tape. When they watched it, Lisa Van Allen and Damon, Lisa said that that wasn't Kelly, and she didn't know who the girl was on there. Lisa told Damon that the tape was created by Chuck and Keith in part of a scheme to extort money from Kelly. Lisa Van Allen said she was the only one close to him and she could get a few $1 million and be taken care of for life if they did that. When they were seeing the tape, Damon said that he could remember Lisa saying, "That man in the tape isn't Robert, trust me." At that time, Brinkley proceeded to ask questions on if he still believed that the tapes were fake and etc. Derrel McDavid still felt the same way. Did Jensen tell you Lisa mentioned Chuck? Yes. Did Jensen tell you about the testimony reference that she referenced Chuck Freeman during? So during her testimony, she had actually mentioned, remember it was getting a lot of media attention? So during Lisa's testimony, she had actually mentioned Chuck's name. At that same time, Chuck then announced that he wants to do a press conference. So you see what they're saying? She put his name out there so that he can go and people will take him seriously about doing this press conference because Lisa had mentioned him. So the media already knew who to look for. When you heard that, did you think that something would happen? He said yes. Chuck will try to extort Rob for money again. Derrel McDavid was concerned about this press conference because the trial was almost over. Rob was winning, but they was worried Chuck would be trying to hurt him with this. Rob then called Derrel McDavid. Robert told him Chuck had threatened to go to the press and that he wanted $100,000. Derrel McDavid then called Jensen and told him, but he didn't tell him at that point in time how much he wanted. When he did tell him what Chuck was doing, Jensen was livid once again. Jensen said, "I can't believe this piece of shit is trying to do this shit again. He's trying to derail this trial." Jensen had spent 7 years on the trial. He knew the tape was fake, and he didn't want Rob go down based on something Chuck did. And the trial was almost won. So Freeman was not under subpoena. He was not included in that trial. He had no parts of the trial. So Jensen told him, "We're going to have to pay him." And that was just to prevent him from lying to the media. Derrel McDavid was convinced Kelly was being impacted by Chuck's false allegations, and it would affect his trial. Derrel McDavid he said he never doubted Jensen, so he did retain $100,000 by having an assistant or himself call a bank. They released the money through a messenger, and the messenger took the money to Freeman. So, did you take that money to Freeman? He said no. Was Kelly there? No, because remember Chuck said that Derrel McDavid delivered that money to him, and Kelly was on the phone. He said no. He said we were all at the courthouse at that time. We was doing the trial. Derrel McDavid says he paid because Jensen told him to pay it. He entered the payment into the Bass Productions, and they reported it on Rob's taxes. So once again, he felt that there was no reason or they were doing nothing criminal or anything or improper. What happened in 2008? He said Rob was acquitted in his 2008 trial. At that time, Derrel McDavid started crying. He said the fact that 12 people came to the same conclusion that we had came to, what did you have to think? What were you thinking to yourself? And through the tears, he says that this was still all fake. He said, I just can't believe we're going through all of this over false allegations. At this point in time, after he was found not guilty, did you have in your mind that there would ever be a federal case or a federal investigation anytime between 2001 and 2002? He said, no. Why would I? I know I wouldn't think that. He said no attorney ever mentioned that there would ever be a federal investigation. No, nothing. He said no federal, local ever reached out to me or Rob. So why would we ever think it'll get to a federal point? After the trial, you recall Jane said that she lived with Rob at the trial. You recall Jane said that she lived with Rob? Yes. Did he share that with you? He said, no, we didn't talk about stuff like that. He said he had only seen Jane at that house one time, and that was sometime long after the trial. Derrel McDavid said that he never knew Jane was ever living in Rob's house. After that, Chuck tried again in early 2009 to get more money from Rob. He tried to get more money by suing Rob this time. Derrel McDavid was also named on that lawsuit. Chuck wanted $250,000. He said, did he say anything in that lawsuit about $1 million? No. He said he figured this is just another extortion plot. Freeman said you had hired him to be a PI. Did you do that? He said no. Derrel McDavid said Margolis passed away at this time from ALS. He said towards the end of the trial, he was almost completely paralyzed. Derrel McDavid begins to cry again. He said after the trial was over, Rob came to see Margolis, and Derrel McDavid told him that this would be the last time that he would ever see him. In 2009, he said there was a different civil attorney because of that. When Margolis died, he had worked for him for almost 20 years. He said Derrel McDavid was in London when his wife called and said Margolis had 5 people he wanted to say goodbye to, and Derrel McDavid was one of them. One of the civil attorneys would have been John Toohey. He consulted with Jensen if he should have to pay Chuck one last time. They say, you know what? The trial is over. At this point in time, Rob needs to move on with his life. He needs to put everything behind him. Chuck wanted $300,000. They gave him $125,000. And they said, hopefully we'll never have to see him again. He said he had one last conversation with Chuck, and Derrel McDavid told him, objection, sustained. When you were speaking to Freeman, he had to switch it up. Or I asked Freeman what he had said, and he said that you told him he wouldn't get another penny. Derrel McDavid said what I told him was he was a rotten piece of shit, and he won't never get another fucking dime, and he can go fuck himself. Corn Capshaw was one of the most powerful men in the industry. Derrel McDavid had hired him to be Rob's personal manager. He would have helped takes Rob's career to a level of all time. Derrel McDavid begged Rob to go to Africa. He said that they had been offered the most lucrative deal that Rob had ever had. Rob didn't want to go, but it was 4 days for $7 million. Derrel McDavid also set up with him the Opening World Cup in to perform at the Opening World Cup in South Africa. Mr. Capshaw was a success, and he was successful. He got Rob to play at Vanderbilt down south in front of 80,000 people. Rob was through Capshaw. He was able to have his first performance at Coachella. He went on Saturday Night Live. He even did Ellen DeGeneres. And this is when he also did the duo with Lady Gaga. And Derrel McDavid said that was his ultimate favorite. The impact of his career, he said that impact on his career started to make it skyrocket. Despite the success, though, the personal relationship they had after the trial started to deteriorate. Derrel McDavid says the best way he can say it is that they had outgrown each other. Success went to his head. He became more demanding. Derrel McDavid said that he couldn't give Rob the attention that he needed, so he turned to other people like Blackie and Divine Stevens. Derrel McDavid had Divine Stevens investigated through Jack Palladino. They found out that Divine Stevens was nothing but a con artist that Blackie had brought in. He was convinced Rob didn't need He convinced Rob that he didn't need Capshaw. At that point, Rob got rid of Capshaw, and then his career plummeted. By that time, they had a relationship. Their relationship was already getting to the point that the end was near. He said Divine Stevens helped to hasten that. He said he stopped really working for him October 2013, but he had officially quit January 7, 2014. And then we had another break. Okay. So then when he came back from break, they discussed. Jennifer says that Derrel McDavid was going to testify that he now has a different view on the child pornography charges. He pretty much already hinted that in his testimony. That puts R. Kelly in a position to not be able to defend himself because he's not testifying. Derrel McDavid would say that he believed she fears that Derrel McDavid will now say that Rob is guilty now. Brinkley comes and says, no, we won't ask about his opinion of Rob's guilt or innocence. We'll just ask him if he still believes that Rob should have been exonerated back then. And he won't ask any questions about any charges that Rob is facing, and they'll limit their questions. So they agreed and moved on. So when you indicated that you stopped working for Kelly in January 2014, was there an event that happened? He said yes. What was the issue? He said Rob and his entities had access to my American Express card. Objection by Jennifer. Sidebar. When they came back, they said, did you have a financial disagreement with Kelly? Yes. Were they discussed in that meeting? It was a question because I didn't hear Derrel McDavid's answer, so sorry. He said at that meeting, Divine Stevens, Daryl Jones, R. Kelly, and him were there. They did not reach an agreement on how to resolve this. After he says he begged Rob to please let's resolve these issues. He said he was not able to get a resolution on his own. He said that's what really helped make the decision that he was done. So instead, Derrel McDavid had to hire a lawyer, Novick and Macy. Was there money you believed you were owed for the work you had done for Kelly? He said yes, that and other things. Was there agreement reached regarding what you would be paid? He said yes, 1.361 something million. He was already receiving 10% of Rob's gross revenue when he quit in 2014. So between August 2010 to January 2014, Rob had grossed about 17 million. On another tour, Rob had grossed another 5 million. At that time, Derrel McDavid had about 99. Okay, I'm not going to go into that number because I had to change that up. So, Some of the questions with the money, Derrel McDavid said he couldn't really answer, I guess because there's other things that's going on. And because of whatever they said during the sidebar, Derrel McDavid was saying, well, I really don't know how to answer that because of that situation. So the 1.3 million was directly connected to the 10% that he was originally supposed to get off of Rob. It had nothing to do with any cases, any trials, any settlements or anything like that. It was only related to his earnings. He said they ultimately reached a settlement agreement. Exhibit 337 was the confidential settlement, page 3. It says Kelly Chef paid a total of $1,361,528.20. They agreed to release all funds to Derrel McDavid in various accounts that totaled $104,293.35. They also agreed to release to Derrel McDavid $96,000 from the base account at the Seaway Bank. $300,000 was supposed to be paid to Derrel McDavid upon execution of the agreement. 18 payments of $40,000 due on the first day of each month beginning August the 1st, 2014. $341,528.20 should be paid to Derrel McDavid in January of 2016. The amounts total the $1.4 million almost. The parties agreed that this agreement represents the entire agreement and the confidentiality agreement. Both him and Rob signed this. This was owed to Derrel McDavid from Rob's gross venue, so they based those numbers off his gross. He always received 10%. They continued to read over those agreements a little bit more. They read about the confidentiality. They showed another confidentiality agreement where McDavid agrees to keep confidential all knowledge and info, whether it's personal or professional, regarding R. Kelly and all his entities private. Derrel McDavid was involved with a lawsuit with Jay-Z. It was filed against Jay-Z by Rob. There was a confidentiality agreement there as well. Binkley asked, does that language in that confidentiality with Rob almost mirror the same as Jay-Z? He said yes, and that was nothing unusual to him because it was pretty much the contract that most entertainers used. Okay. He said he went, I said, these agreements we went over in the beginning. I'm not going to go over them again. Because the government, these are the government's exhibits, and I know I did all the exhibits for you guys. So I'll just give you the numbers and come back and go back to the old videos to look them up. He said nothing about that confidentiality agreement struck him as noteworthy or strange. Did you get paid the $1.3 million by the way of monthly payments? He said no. He said that caused Derrel McDavid to go back to his attorneys, and they filed a breach of contract lawsuit. Exhibit 338 is the affidavit that Derrel McDavid signed regarding the breach. He read over the paperwork that was filed. The defendant failed to make the $40,000 payment starting on August the 14th, 2014. Eventually, he said he did receive the balance that was due. That these payments have anything to do with Rob's case in 2008. He said absolutely not. It was just money that was owed to me by Rob. Okay, so then they began to ask about the payments made to Jane and her parents. I went over all of these numbers too. Exhibit 411 and 414, they talked about 7 payments. August 26, 2008, that was a $10,000 that was made to Brandon. The memo says, okay, per Derrel McDavid. 9/17/2008, that was a $30,000 payment made to Brandon. February 15, 2007, there was a $4,000 loan. They asked about the loan. Derrel McDavid said he always advised Rob to stop loaning his friends and coworkers money. He said he did that all the time. August 22nd, 2007, $2,500 loan to Brandon. January 14th, 2008, $10,000 loan to Brandon. May 9th, 2008, $2,500 loan to Brandon. June 6th, June 20th, 2008, $3,000 loan to Brandon. So, those numbers, what they're gonna say is the point that they're trying to make is that when Rob had to do settlements, so the government, when they showed us this during the government's questioning, they were making it seem like all of those payments were related to some type of settlement. But what the defense, Derrel McDavid's defense is showing, if you want to look at the settlements that Rob has made to other people, these payments were far less than what those settlements is for. So why would those parents settle for something way less than what the others settled for? So clearly those were not settlement payments. Those were loans because, like he said, Rob was known to just loan out money. So he said this particular payment, the $30,000 one, which is the biggest, he said Rob gave them that money because Susan had asked Rob if he could help her remodel her shoe store. Derrel McDavid said he even took it upon himself to actually go to the shoe store to see if it even needed that. And he said that $30,000 payment had nothing to do with that trial. Susan testified that there were no payments made for silence. And Derrel McDavid said he has no reason to not believe that. Looking at payments for Jane. July 3rd, 2008, it was $207.50 ticket. That was an airline ticket. October 22nd, 2009, $549.70. That was an airline ticket. August 12th, 2011, $5,325. Derrel McDavid said Rob had paid her credit card bill. That's what that payment was for. The payments made to Jane after that had nothing to do with Derrel McDavid. He was no longer working with him. Jane had testified that the money that she received was not for silence, so he had no reason to believe anything other than that. When did you receive names and arrange flights? He said, "Oh, that wasn't my job. I didn't have time for that, so I didn't do that." High level. Rob had a high level of people traveling with him during tours. He said sometimes he'll take up to 60 people with him. He said, and they would always argue about that because they had to rent more buses and they had to do this. So they were always in constant arguments when it came to like those shows. He said he never knew who was flying where he never knew who he was flying and where. Between 2001 to 2008, these are bullet points. He said, you have been talking videos 2 and 3 that were talked about. Did you know about them? He said, no. I found out about those tapes with you guys at this trial. Did you ever hear stories? Did you ever hear the stories that were told by Nia, Paulina, and Tracy? He said, absolutely not. Did you ever hear Jane say the things that she said here? He said, no, I never did. None of these people told me these stories, nor do I even think I even met any of these girls. Between 2001 and 2008, Jane had only told him the original thing that she had always said. That was not her on that tape. Are you in a different position today than back then? He said, yes, I am. Do you believe now that you are impacted by the things that you didn't have access to? He said, yes, I am. Are they different now? Yes. How do you justify your belief that Rob should have been exonerated in 2008? He said, in these 3 weeks, I have learned a lot of things that I didn't know. But I knew Rob and Jane. What I knew about Rob and Jane is that they always said it was false over and over and over again. And just didn't even prove that. What I knew before this trial is that he was innocent. Today I'm embarrassed. Objection. Between 2000 and 2008, did you want to believe Kelly? He said yes, because I loved him. I wanted to believe him. He was a genius. He was quiet. Derrel McDavid starts crying. Government and Bajin object. No further questions. Bajin cross-examines. You knew Robert for 30 years, right? Yes. Earlier you described him as shy introvert. Yes. Rob came from a humble beginning. Yes. Would you agree that he has a rare talent? Rob is a genius. Would you agree that he had a fair amount of deficit? Absolutely. Robert didn't want to be involved in any money because he was pretty much less than helpful with financial issues. Yes, but he said yes, but he didn't handle all the financial issues either. Derrel McDavid says a lot of that rested on the shoulders of his staff. He had deficits in basic reading and writing. He said yes. He had people. He had. I don't know. You know he had dropped out of high school in his freshman year. Yes. Then Derrel McDavid says, I do. He had dyslexia. Would you agree that Robert needed assistance with his performance obligations? Yes. Like reading a contract? Yes. In the mid-90s, he started blowing up? Yes. This resulted in a crease in financially? Yes. You said more money, more problems. He said, yeah, I think that's the quote. And they made another little joke about Biggie and Jennifer being from Brooklyn. You were in a position to have people, to hire people like lawyers, etc. He said yes. You said that you hired the best. Yes. Would you say that Rob sometimes didn't keep the best people around him? He said wholeheartedly he did not. He said they took advantage of Rob. Yes. During the time you managed him, he said yes, but I tried to tell him. He said this is the reason why people in his camp didn't like me. Remember the testimony about Tiffany? Yes. Even before the tape came out in the Sun-Times, there was an article with Tiffany. Yes. Did it seem like after the article more lawsuits came out? Yes. Tiffany went from a paternity to an underage lawsuit. Yes. That was more reasons for you to believe that this was false and a turning point from where you learned, from when you originally learned about the lawsuit. Yes. Margolis was a prominent and respected. Yes. This isn't someone who would be out to ruin his reputation or put his reputation on the line for some child pornography. No. He wouldn't risk his career, his legacy by covering up for Robert. No. You mentioned around 2001, you heard from Robert about Chuck having a tape. Yes. When you received that info, he wasn't talking about child pornography, was he? No. Just a regular sex tape. Yes. Jack Palladino was a well-respected private investigator. Yes. That tape got handed over to Jack from Chuck. Do you know if that tape got handed over from Jack over to Jack from Chuck? No. He said I wasn't there and Kelly wasn't there either. Eventually, he said the tape was of poor quality. He said so that's why he recited that's why they didn't feel that they needed to hire a criminal defense attorney because the tapes it was a poor quality and it didn't really look like anything. You never seen videos 2 or 3? No. Nor did Margolis or Jensen. He said not to my knowledge. Fast forward to April 2007. Lisa Van Allen video of the threesome. He said yes, that had Drea in it. We all know that she claimed to have had one with Jane, but that never materialized. He said correct. Jensen didn't even have that tape. He said no. From 2000 to 2010, there were a number of tapes that were out there. Yes. And to your knowledge, the tapes were with Kelly and non-minors. Yes. If you had knowledge that there were minors on this, he said, oh, definitely, I would have definitely turned them over to the police. As the trial is going on, Jensen thought that they were winning the case, correct? Yes. When Chuck threatened the press conference, yes. Did you think anything criminal about paying Chuck? He said, if I would have thought that, then I wouldn't have done it. No one had ever came and talked to you, lawyers, police, feds, or anything. He said, as I said before, no police contact ever was made with us. No one ever spoke of the feds, and no one ever said that the feds will pick this up. He said, Jennifer said, so you felt like Chuck was a full-time job and spent his life trying to extort Rob. He said, that's exactly what it felt like. Jennifer says 1 second, and then she says, no further questions. Judge said, let's end it for today. They began discussing the limited instructions. The government doesn't object to whatever Bunjean's instructions was, and that was it. It took some while. So the government is up because Brown is not asking any questions. So the government will cross-examine Derrel McDavid tomorrow, and once they do that, I guess it'll be done. So hopefully they can finish their questioning in one day, and then we'll be done. Any questions? Because it's 10:30. I'm not staying on here long, you guys. Let me scroll up.
I didn't see a lot of questions down. I'm still echoing, but you can probably end it. Good job.
Thank you so much. Thank you. If you guys do have questions, I'm sorry. I feel like I'm getting sick and I want to get some extra rest tonight. So if you guys do have questions, just save it for me tomorrow or put them in the community chat and I'll try to answer them tomorrow through the day. If you guys think of anything.
Try to wear your mask tomorrow.
I do. We can't go into the courthouse without them. It's just because I'm on. I don't drive out here, so I'm on public transportation. So that's probably my issue too. I try to do like an Uber or something in the morning so I can get there early enough. But yeah, that's probably it. This shirt was actually given to me at court by one of Rob's people. It was a gift. Y'all like it? And it says,
oh, I like that a lot.
Yeah, so that was given to me as a gift. What a nice little hat. I won't mention any names on who, but I appreciate it. I really did appreciate it. I really do appreciate it. So, but if y'all like these shirts, I do have nieces that make them as well. So just let me know. Tanya, thank you so much. I appreciate you. I know we're not doing a lot of talking tonight, but
that's fine.
Yeah. So you guys have a good night. I will see you tomorrow. I promise I won't feel like this tomorrow. It's the weekend, so we'll be able to kick it. Stay up. And I'll answer everything tomorrow. Okay?
Okay.
Have a good night. Have a good night, you guys. Be blessed.
Bye-bye. Be careful tomorrow.